How does an island's epic struggle with, well, financial collapse and a really fragile power grid offer a powerful lesson for all of us about resilience and, the fight for control?
It's a compelling question.
You might have caught glimpses of Puerto Rico's story in the news, maybe bits and pieces, but today we're taking a deep dive into the complex challenges facing this U.S. territory.
Yeah, it's a really gripping story, actually. Puerto Rico faces these massive financial pressures alongside a critical battle for its energy future.
So what's our mission today?
Our mission is pretty clear. We'll explore the legacy of over $70 billion in debt, plus this staggering $55 billion in unfunded pension liabilities that really plunged Puerto Rico into a deep crisis.
Okay.
Then we'll pivot to the island's ongoing fight for a reliable and hopefully sustainable energy grid. We'll look at the powerful forces at play and honestly the fascinating tension between different solutions being proposed.
Right.
Ultimately, we want to show you how decisions about debt are deeply connected to the island's energy stability and, frankly, the daily lives of its people.
And we've got a stack of fascinating documents to guide us. Today we're looking at official government oversight reports, independent economic analyses, and even some, really insightful insider perspectives.
A good mix of sources.
Definitely. Okay, let's unpack this.
So, setting the stage. Before 2016, Puerto Rico was really caught in a deep financial vortex.
Yeah, what did that look like practically?
Well, the island had been struggling with a whole decade of basically zero economic growth, chronic budget deficits year after year. And by 2015, its own governor had publicly declared its massive debt unpayable.
Unpayable. That's a strong statement.
It is. And the result, the island was effectively locked out of capital markets, couldn't borrow, couldn't refinance. They hit a wall.
Okay, so total crisis mode. That's where PROMESA comes in.
Exactly. That's where the Puerto Rico Oversight, Management, and Economic Stability Act, or PROMESA, came into play in 2016. This federal law was enacted specifically to address this severe crisis. And crucially, it gave Puerto Rico a unique bankruptcy-like path to restructure its debt, something not typically available to U.S. states.
A unique path, okay.
Yeah. And the core of PROMESA was the establishment of the Financial Oversight and Management Board, or FOMB. People usually just call it the board.
The FOMB, right, and they got broad powers.
The very broad powers to oversee the island's finances, yes.
And, to its credit, the FOMB, working alongside Puerto Rico's government, has made some significant headway, right?
They have. They've managed to restructure about 80% of the island's outstanding debt.
80%? That's a big chunk.
It is. Think about that. They've lowered total liabilities from over $70 billion down to a much more sustainable $37 billion.
Wow, that's a massive turnaround in just the raw numbers. But what's the real insight here beyond those figures?
Well, it truly is a remarkable financial reset. The key insight, I think, is how PROMESA provided this unique, almost unprecedented legal path for a U.S. territory. It allowed for massive debt write-downs you usually only see in, international sovereign defaults.
Okay, so not just moving money around.
Not at all. This wasn't just shuffling numbers. It fundamentally reset Puerto Rico's financial playing field. Of course, it happened under this extraordinary federal oversight.
Makes sense.
And you see it in the specifics. For instance, those huge pension liabilities, remember, once over $55 billion.
Yeah, passive.
They were restructured down to just $7 billion. That action alone radically reduced the portion of every tax dollar going to debt service from 25 cents down to less than 7 cents.
Huge difference.
Absolutely. And similarly, major debts tied to things like sales tax revenues, the COFINA debt and infrastructure, the HTA debt, they were also significantly slashed, saving billions more in future payments.
So these figures, they clearly show the FOMB's financial impact. You might be thinking, listening to this, that these figures paint a completely clear picture of success.
Okay, right.
But here's where the story takes a fascinating turn, right? It reveals a much more contested reality. While these numbers look impressive on paper, not everyone agrees on the FOMB's overall approach or, its real impact.
That's true.
Some critics have gone pretty far, calling PROMESA a failed colonial experiment. Their argument is that an undemocratic, unelected board has basically taken control of Puerto Rico's fiscal policy because it's a territory.
Right. They see it as an imposition, fundamentally.
An imposition rather than a solution, yeah.
And those criticisms, they often stem from how the FOMB operates. Its approach has been directly compared to the Troika austerity policies.
The Troika. You mean like what happened in Greece?
Exactly. referring to those harsh economic conditions imposed by international creditors like the EU and IMF on Greece during its financial crisis.
Right, the really deep cuts.
Deep cuts. So the FOMB is seen as imposing similar sequester-like cuts that some argue, far from fostering growth, actually hinder Puerto Rico's economic recovery.
Can you give an example of that tension?
Sure. A key example often cited is this. While the FOMB mandates downsizing across government agencies, cutting local jobs and services, it is projected to spend over $1.5 billion on outside consultants and legal fees by 2026.
$1.5 billion on consultants.
That's the projection.
Wow. That's a staggering figure, especially when you compare it to the original congressional estimates. Weren't they much lower?
Much lower. The original estimate was around $370 million. So, yeah, a huge increase.
Okay, beyond just the sheer cost, how do critics say these external consultants impact the long-term capacity of Puerto Rico's own government? Are they helping build local expertise?
Well, that's precisely the concern critics raise. They argue this kind of heavy spending creates a sort of parallel government of consultants.
A parallel government. Okay.
And the worry is that this, in turn, erodes local technical capacity within Puerto Rico's own governmental structures. It means institutional knowledge and expertise might be migrating externally, potentially making Puerto Rico more reliant on outside entities in the long run, even after the FOMB is supposed to be gone.
Right. And speaking of the FOMB leaving, it's important to remember that the board is supposed to terminate its oversight eventually, right? Yeah. What are the conditions for that?
Correct. The conditions are basically twofold. Puerto Rico needs to demonstrate it has reasonable access to credit markets again.
Okay.
And it needs to have balanced its budget for 4 consecutive years. And specifically, using modified accrual accounting standards.
Which is a stricter way of accounting, basically. It makes it harder to hide deficits.
Exactly. It's a more rigorous and transparent way of tracking government finances.
But there's a problem with tracking that progress, isn't there?
There is. 5 years into PROMESA, there's a significant roadblock. Puerto Rico's audited financial statements, the official proof of their financial health, are still 3 years in arrears. They're way behind.
3 years behind, so it's hard to even verify if they're meeting those budget goals.
It makes it incredibly difficult to accurately track progress on those termination requirements. So what does this all mean? It means the debt story, this whole financial oversight chapter, is really far from over.
And its effects spill over
directly into another critical area for the island: energy.
Right, energy. After Hurricanes Irma and Maria just devastated Puerto Rico's grid back in 2017, I mean, that led to one of the longest blackouts in U.S. history, didn't it?
It did. Some areas were without power for almost a year. It was catastrophic.
Almost a year. Just try to imagine that. Running a business, keeping food cold, basic health care. When your power is out for months on end.
It's not just an inconvenience. It's a profound disruption to daily life. And understandably, it lit a fire under Puerto Rico's efforts to transform its energy system.
It really brought the need for resilience front and center.
Absolutely. Resilience became the watchword.
Yeah.
And in response to that devastation, recognizing the urgent need for change, Puerto Rico's legislature passed Act 17 in 2019.
Act 17, what did that do?
This was landmark legislation. It set an incredibly ambitious goal to meet 100% of its electricity needs with renewable energy by 2050.
Wow, 100% renewable by 2050. That's ambitious anywhere.
Yeah, very ambitious. And crucially, this is not just an aspiration. It's a legally mandated goal. And interestingly, it was even certified by the FOMB in previous budgets, suggesting some initial alignment on this renewable path.
Okay, so there was agreement, at least initially. Now, amidst all these struggles, the blackouts, the legal mandates, there's a truly surprising success story bubbling up, right? Rooftop solar.
Yes, it's quite remarkable. Rooftop solar has just boomed on the island. If you go back to 2017, there were only about 8,000 installations.
Okay, a small base.
A very small base. Today, that number has exploded to over 117,000 systems.
117,000, that's what, almost 10% of households?
Almost 10% of households on the island, yeah. And what's really striking is that many of them were installed without any government subsidy.
No subsidy, so people are just doing it themselves. What does that boom tell us about the island's situation?
It tells us volumes. It tells us that for many families and businesses, installing rooftop solar, often paired with battery storage, is, and I'm quoting here, currently the only way that families and businesses can insulate themselves against a continually unreliable and fragile grid.
So it's resilience born out of necessity.
Exactly. It's a testament to self-sufficiency, a powerful grassroots movement responding directly to a critical infrastructure failure, people taking power literally into their own hands.
But this organic success story, this sort of beacon of self-reliance, it's now under threat, isn't it, from the FOMB?
It is, unfortunately. The FOMB have been actively working to dismantle net metering.
Okay, remind us what net metering is again.
Sure. Net metering is basically the policy that gives residential solar users credit on their electricity bill for the excess power they generate and send back to the grid. It's a key incentive for rooftop solar.
Got it. So it makes solar more affordable, and the FOMB wants to get rid of it, even though the local legislature wants to keep it.
That's the conflict. The Puerto Rico legislature explicitly passed a law to extend net metering through 2030, but the FOMB declared this new law inconsistent with the approved fiscal plan.
Inconsistent. So they're using their fiscal authority to potentially override local energy policy.
Precisely. It sets the stage for a potential and likely complex legal battle.
Why would they push back on a policy that seems to be empowering so many people and boosting resilience? What's the FOMB's logic?
Well, it seems to be a classic clash of priorities. From the FOMB's perspective, focusing purely on the fiscal side, policies like net metering can impact the revenues and the overall financial health of the main public utility. Prepay.
Prepay. The Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority, which itself needs major reform and is part of the debt restructuring puzzle.
Exactly. Prepay's financial stability is a major concern for the board. But the potential consequences of weakening net metering could be really severe for the solar momentum.
Is there evidence of that elsewhere?
There is actually a real-world example just across the country in California when they made similar reforms, weakening their net metering policy.
What happened?
They saw a staggering drop in new solar installations, somewhere between 66% and 83% in the months right after the policy changes took effect.
Wow, a huge drop. So it shows just how vital these incentives are for driving adoption and, fostering that energy independence people are seeking.
Definitely. It highlights a potential chilling effect.
Okay, so that's one major energy conflict. Rooftop solar versus the FOMB's fiscal mandate. But there's another big one, right? The push for natural gas.
Yes, that's the second major energy conflict playing out. It involves a company called New Fortress Energy, or NFE.
Okay, NFE, what's their role?
Well, NFE's subsidiary, Genera PR, now operates most of Prepay's power generation plants under a contract.
So they're running the power plants.
Correct. And NFE sees what it openly calls a major opportunity to sell significantly more natural gas, specifically liquefied natural gas, or LNG, to Puerto Rico.
An opportunity for them, meaning more gas imports for the island.
Exactly. They've even stated their vision for Puerto Rico's energy future is essentially 100% gas, possibly by converting existing oil-fired power plants to run on natural gas.
100% gas. That seems, well, directly at odds with the island's legal mandate for 100% renewables by 2050.
It certainly appears to be. And it creates a pretty clear potential conflict of interest, right? Genera, the NFE subsidiary, manages Prepay's generation system, while its parent company, NFE, has a strong vested interest in selling a particular fuel source, natural gas.
Yeah, that does sound like a conflict.
And we saw this conflict play out very publicly this past year. There was a major development when the FOMB itself actually rejected a huge proposed contract.
The FOMB rejected it. What was the deal?
It was a proposed 15-year contract, valued at around $20 million, for New Fortress Energy to supply natural gas to Genera PR, its own subsidiary basically managing Prepay's plants.
$20 billion over 15 years. That's massive. Why did the FOMB, usually focused on fiscal discipline, reject it? You'd think they might like a long-term contract.
Their reasons were quite specific and telling. They cited concerns over creating a practical monopoly for NFE on the island's gas supply.
Okay, monopoly concerns.
Also, a take-or-pay clause in the contract.
Yeah.
This would have forced Puerto Rico to pay for a minimum amount of gas, whether it actually consumed it or not. Very risky financially.
Take or pay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those can be dangerous. Anything else?
And they also pointed to a lack of transparent bidding in the whole contract process. It wasn't seen as competitive enough.
So even the FOMB, with its focus on strict financial controls, saw this particular gas deal as too risky, maybe even predatory, for Puerto Rico's finances.
Apparently so. There was a significant pushback.
So what happened next? Did NFE just accept that?
No, the dispute has only escalated since then. The company recently withheld an LNG cargo shipment.
They withheld fuel.
Yes, claiming Puerto Rico, or rather, Prepay, owes them over $9 million from gas deliveries way back in 2020, plus interest.
Wow. What was the impact of withholding the fuel?
It forced the island to idle 10-generation units and run 4 others on more expensive diesel fuel, which obviously increases costs and emissions.
Not good. And is anyone else pushing back on NFA?
Yes. The Puerto Rico Energy Bureau, the local regulator, has stepped in. They've halted generous activities related to converting power plants to gas.
Okay.
And they're actually considering imposing hefty daily fines, potentially $250,000 per day, for non-compliance with regulations and information requests.
$250,000 a day, that's serious.
It is. And to add another layer of complexity, a federal court recently ruled that NFE's LNG import terminal near San Juan actually falls under federal regulatory jurisdiction, specifically FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
What does that mean practically?
It means NFE now needs to comply with the whole set of federal environmental and safety regulations that the company had previously managed to avoid. More oversight, more scrutiny.
So things are getting complicated for New Fortress Energy.
Very complicated. This is a critical moment. For a company that reportedly gets about 30% of its global revenue just from Puerto Rico, and which has seen its market value drop significantly, something like 75% in the last year or so. The stakes are high.
Okay, so we have the debt restructuring under the FOMB with all its successes and controversies.
Right.
And then we have this intense battle over the energy future renewables versus gas, local control versus external influence. How do these two threads really connect?
Well, what's truly fascinating here, and I think the core takeaway, is how these two stories, Puerto Rico's debt oversight and its energy policy, are so deeply, inextricably intertwined.
How so?
The FOMB, acting under its fiscal mandate from PROMESA, directly impacts energy decisions. Think about the net metering debate we just discussed, or their rejection of that massive gas contract. Those are fiscal decisions with huge energy consequences. And at the same time, the reliability or lack thereof and the cost of energy directly affect Puerto Rico's economic stability. If energy is expensive and unreliable, it hinders economic growth, which in turn impacts the island's ability to achieve that long-term debt sustainability the FOMB is aiming for.
It's a constant feedback loop then.
Exactly. It's a feedback loop where one area's success or failure can ripple right through the other. You can't really fix one without considering the other.
And all this uncertainty, this constant back and forth between external oversight like the FOMB and local governance efforts, it must be palpable for people living there.
Absolutely. It creates real uncertainty that directly impacts the daily lives of Puerto Ricans, from their monthly electricity bills to the prospects for broader economic recovery.
So where do you see the core tension lying in all this? Is it just, a simple clash of mandates, like FOMB focuses purely on the numbers, local government focuses on resilience, or is it something deeper?
I think it's absolutely deeper than just mandates. It's really a compelling, real-world example of top-down financial discipline, clashing head-on with bottom-up, grassroots efforts for self-sufficiency and resilience, like that rooftop solar boom.
Okay.
The core tension, I believe, lies in the fundamental struggle for autonomy. Who truly gets to decide Puerto Rico's future?
Right.
Is it an external board appointed years ago, focused primarily on fiscal metrics? Or is it the island's people and their elected representatives who are trying to build a resilient, sustainable future from the ground up, especially after the trauma of Maria?
And the energy decisions become proxies for that larger struggle.
Exactly. The energy decisions, whether they lean towards decentralized solar or centralized gas infrastructure, are not just about power plants or grid technology. They're profoundly political and, you could argue, existential questions about control and the vision for the island's path forward.
This really raises an important question, not just for Puerto Rico, but maybe for other places too. How can a jurisdiction effectively balance that inherent need for fiscal responsibility, which is real?
It's definitely real.
With the equally pressing demand for reliable, affordable, and sustainable infrastructure, especially when external entities like the FOMB hold such significant power over local decision-making. It's a tough balancing act.
It's an incredibly difficult needle to thread.
So as we conclude this deep dive, let's leave you, our listener, with this thought. If PROMESA was, as some of those critics we mentioned argue, and I'm quoting their perspective here, Congress's fourth try at cutting through the Puerto Rican Gordian knot in its interminable attempt to colonially rule Puerto Rico and its people.
Strong words.
Very strong words. And if, in their view, it has failed to truly resolve the underlying issues, what does that suggest about the actual path forward for the island? It leaves you wondering.
It really does. Because the challenge for Puerto Rico, when you look at everything we've discussed, it's clearly not just about balancing budgets or choosing energy sources, as critical as those are.
Right.
It's also deeply entangled with the fundamental question of self-governance and Puerto Rico's complex, often fraught relationship with the United States.
And maybe it has broader implications, too.
I think so. In a world that's increasingly defined by global economic pressures and undeniable climate vulnerability, Puerto Rico's ongoing struggle for financial stability, for energy security, for autonomy offers a really powerful lens. It forces us to examine the very meaning of sovereignty and resilience in the 21st century.
A powerful lens indeed. So thinking about everything we've covered today, the debt, the oversight board, the solar boom, the gas conflicts, what stands out to you about Puerto Rico's complex journey?